Well, greetings once again, my fellow Star Trek fans. I'm back with the latest shipment from the build, the U.S.S. Enterprise NCC 1701D. And as you can see, she's really starting to come together. You can see the port side nacelle, the back of the dorsal hull. We had the last shipment, we almost closed off the bottom of the primary hull, and we were working on the nacelle. So let's go over to the desk and I'll show you guys what's in the latest shipment. Alright, let's see the latest shipment. DeAugustini collectibles from the models. Noticing that it doesn't say FanHome anymore on the box. So let's take a look, and we're going to go through everything in a moment. Let me see, this shipment, the product code for this shipment is F419KTS030, and this is Star Trek Enterprise Build-Up Issue Number 30. So let's get right into this. Alright, what I'm going to do is we're going to take a look at the issues, and we'll go through them in a little more detail. You can see this is, this is issue number 116. You can see the nacelle. 115. 118. And lastly, we've got 117. And we've got Star Trek The Next Generation. This is shipment number 30. How cool is this? And look at the ship. And that's everything in the box. So let's take a look at everything a little more closely. Let me put the box aside. So we've got, let me get them in order. We've got issues number 115, 16, 17, and 18. So we'll put those to the side for a moment, and we'll take a look at the magazine. Build a U.S.S. Enterprise NCC 1701D. It seems like we've been doing this for a long time. We're actually able to start to see the finish line. You can see in this one, in this issue, they've got a lot of stuff. The magazine feels thicker than the other issues. You can see the ship parts, the assembly, and then we have a lot of the behind the scenes information from Star Trek The Next Generation. So we're going to go into stage 115 right now, and you can see the parts list. And it looks like we have the bottom for the primary hull underneath, and you can see we have the nacelle, and you can see the power pack from 117 and more pieces of the nacelle in 118. So parts wise, there's not a whole lot of parts in this shipment. Stage 15 assembly. You can see in this short stage the saucer moves one panel closer to completion before you prepare the battery box for the starboard side nacelle. So you can see the area we're going to work on, the underneath, and I think this is going to be the cover for the battery pack. And that's pretty quick. You can see the switch with the battery pack, the battery cover, and that's going to use the button batteries. And then for stage 116, you can see how that's going to actually go into the nacelle. And you can see, take the lock spring and lock pin and slot the pins together. And you can see how we're going to put them into the side. And cover the spring assembly with the lock bracket to secure the bracket with 2 AM screws, and stage 116 is complete. So we move on to 117, and you can see this is pretty basic. We're going to take the battery box, put the nut on, and then we're going to put the plate on the back, and that's going to be held in place with 2 AP screws. So we're going to do more work on the nacelle. You can see we're going to do the same thing with the plates, with the spring. And look at that. We're going to bring the halves together. And that's going to be held in place with DP screws. And you can see where the battery is going to go. This is really getting exciting. I wonder if we're going to get to finish this. You can see we're going to put a battery in. And we're going to put the cover, the battery plate on. And we're going to test it out. And you can see the little green beacon for the starboard nacelle. Moving on to stage 118. Add a finishing touch to the starboard nacelle, then fitting the parts to bring your saucer section and battle section together for the first time. That's going to be really cool. You can see that little part that's going to go on the bottom of the nacelle. So you can see, begin by retrieving the battle section. And you can see the little areas. We're going to take 2 rear fitting wedges and push them underneath the docking latches. And you can see on the bottom, repeat the process because there's 4 of them. Next, lift the magnetic deck 8 assembly and set it safely to the side of the battle section for your Enterprise D. So now it looks like we're going to be ready. Wow, check it out, guys. We're actually going to put them together. So always remove both warp nacelles before attaching the battle section to the saucer. Separate the 2 main sections. Simply reverse the process as described on this page. Keep the battery cover and the battery box screw in a safe place for use in the next stage. You can see we got to take the battle section or the battle bridge out when we put the pieces together. So this is going to be really awesome. We're actually going to put it together for the first time. And that's the completion of the assembly instructions. Now we're going to go into the episode information. I love this stuff. This is Gambit, Part 1. A tale of space pirating, seizing ancient artifacts, including the Enterprise D battle bridge. This is episode 7.4 and premiered October 11th of 1993. An investigation into Captain Picard's apparent death leads the Enterprise to a cutthroat band of archaeological raiders. Bruce Gray has first played the Admiral Chakotay in an episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine that debuted just 6 days before, Looking over, you can see some of the sketches. Ricardo de Galdo created this Meridorn Raider concept for Deep Space Nine. The ship would appear once that it was shown before becoming a Baron ship in the Gambit Part 1. Captain Picard's death is a loss to the entire Federation. Derek Webster, who played Sanders, also plays a Romulan officer in 2 episodes of Star Trek Picard. So we move on now to the Gambit Part 2. There's treasure to be found in this piratical romp, despite the debut of its writer. Despite the doubts of its writers, This is episode 7.5 and premiered October 18th of 1993. Picard turns pirate captain to unravel a mystery behind the looting of several ancient Vulcan artifacts. A height of 6'9". James Worthy is one of the tallest actors in Star Trek. You always seem to be after my job, Picard to Riker. You can see some of these sketches. Illustrator and technical consultant Rick Sternbach's concept for the ancient Vulcan artifact, including a bald Vulcan figure. It was changed in the final prop so that the figures wouldn't be mistaken for images of Picard on close-up. And here we're going to go on to Phantasms. This is a great episode. Patrick Stewart directs. an admiral returns, a feud comes under fire, but it's the cake scenes that everybody remembers. Taking a bite out of Deanna Troi. This is episode 7.6 and premiered October 25th of 1993. Problems with the Enterprise's warp core coincide with Data having his first ever nightmares. Could there be a connection? And here's stylist Patricia Miller during the filming for Phantasms, which reused the model of Data's head made for Time's Arrow in season 5. Oh, and there's Deanna Troi with the cake. Dreams are the royal road to the knowledge of my mind, Deanna Troi quotes Sigmund Freud. Phantasms reuses footage from season 1's 11001001 to represent Starbase 84. The model photography was originally shot for Star Trek III: The Search for Spock in 1984. The color of the planetary background was changed for the remastered version in this episode in 2014. You can see director Patrick Stewart discusses dream sequence with Martina Sirtis, and hairstylist Joy Zapata, and makeup artist June Westmore, also known as June Abston Haymore. They prepare her to play the role for a cellular peptide cake. That was a pretty amusing scene. Now we move on to another episode. This is Dark Page. And this is the season's second dive into dream imagery, bids farewell to Troy's mother and gives us a glimpse of her father. This is episode 7.7 and premiered November 1st of 1993. When Luxana Troi falls into a coma, Deanna steps inside her mother's mind to search for a hidden trauma. Future Hollywood star Kristen Dunst had drill with fellow guest performer Simon the Dog. I just found out I had a sister I never knew, Deanna Troi. Mick Byram, Ian Andrew Troi, also featured as Ensign Paul Hickman in Season 4's Identity Crisis. Both his appearances see him wearing an archaeological Starfleet uniform of the era. This illustrator and technical consultant Rick Sternbach designed the dollhouse for inclusion in the illusionary depiction of Deanna's childhood home. Moving on, we have episode 7.8, which is titled Attached. 7 years of sexual tension are addressed in this episode that sets the tone for the rest of the series. November 8th, 1993 is when episode 7.8 premiered. Picard and Crusher are forced to address their feelings for one another when their minds are linked against their will. How awkward could that be? Of course, in season 3 of Picard, we find out that they have a son together. Why didn't you ever tell me you were in love with me? Beverly Crusher to Jean-Luc Picard. And look at the sign, the Hollywood sign in the background. Director Jonathan Frakes oversees a crane shot in Bronson Canyon, just short of the distance from Cedar Grove, as seen in The Gambit Part 1. Over the years, more than 20 Star Trek episodes have been shot in LA's Griffith Park area. How cool is that picture? And take a look at this. First seen as the Rudian pistol in the high ground during Season 3, this prop weapon makes the last of several Star Trek The Next Generation appearances at the hands of the Prit in Attached. Next we have Force of Nature. After Attached raised the bar of Season 7, this episode sets limits on approaches not to be taken again. This is episode 7.9 and premiered November 15th of 1993. Two scientists go to the drastic lengths to prove that warp travel possesses a threat to the future of the entire galaxy. Lee Ehrenberg Prack played his first Ferengi in Star Trek Deep Space Nine and would play a third in Bloodlines. They wanted proof, I'm going to give it to them. Serova before sacrificing herself for her cause. And this is footage of the Tolarian ship from Season 4's Suddenly Human, was used to represent the Hekaron's vessel in Force of Nature. And you can see casting spot. Of course, that's Mr. Data's pet. Introducing an actor Brent Spiner's suggestion, Data's cat is first seen in Season 4's Data's Day, played by the long-haired Somali supplied by Birds and Animals Unlimited. This male cat's next appearance, in theory, he is given a name Spot for the first time. Kitty kitty. Moving on, we have Inheritance. This rule-breaking episode adds another member to the ever-expanding Star Trek The Next Generation family tree. This is episode 7.9 and premiered on November 22nd of 1993. When a brilliant scientist claims to be Data's mother, the android has his doubts, but chooses to welcome her into his life. And this is Data's painting of Lal from Season 3's The Offspring, was created by scenic art artist Wendy Dropinis. Can also be seen in 1994 film Star Trek Generations. And that was a great episode with Lal. She was so cute. I would like to get to know you better, Mother. Data, to Juliana Tainer. After playing the elderly Dr. Soon in Season 4's Brothers, vision of Soon in Season 6's Birthright Part 1, Brent Spiner plays the character for the last time as a hologram in Inheritance. Of course, he would reprise that role in Star Trek Picard. Next, we have Parallels. Worf steps into a multiverse of madness in Star Trek The Next Generation take on the What If format. This is episode 7.11 and premiered November 29th of 1993. Worf moves through a series of alternate realities, including one where he is married to Deanna Troi. The cake was chocolate, then it was yellow. Worf. You remember he's also in the quarters where the picture is moving from wall to wall. Last seen in Season 5's The First Duty, Will Wheaton makes his first of 2 Season 7 guest appearances in Parallels. And look at this. Scenic arts supervisor and technical consultant Mike Okuda created this painting of the Klingon Vorcha-class attack cruiser, seen hanging in Worf's quarters in 2 of the realities he visits in Parallel. I love the Vorcha class. The thing is so cool looking. So the next one is one of my absolute favorite episodes. We got the Pegasus. The first draft of this classic episode saw Deanna as Eliza Doolittle and left reprimanded Riker in the brig. This is episode 7.12 and premiered January 10th of 1994. Riker's loyalty is attested when his old commanding officer orders him to keep secrets from Captain Picard. Of course, they're talking about the cloaking system, where the Pegasus had the prototype and rematerialized inside of an asteroid. Michael Mack was writing intern on Star Trek The Next Generation when he was cast as Sirol, Star Trek's first black Romulan. He also featured as Ensign Hayes in Star Trek Generations in 1994. Mutiny on a Federation starship, Jean-Luc Picard. In an unused concept design for the Pegasus, senior illustrator and technical consultant Rick Sternbach proposes using parts of the Enterprise C model built for Season 3's Yesterday's Enterprise to create a new class of starship. That would have been really cool. Of course, the Pegasus is much like the U.S.S. Grissom that we see in The Search for Spock. Moving on, we have Homeward. 2 stories were combined to create this controversial take on Star Trek's Prime Directive. This is episode 7.13 and premiered January 17th of 1994. And you can see Paul Sorvino was in the episode. Worf's faster brother sets out to save a developing culture from extinction, violating one of the Federation's highest laws. Brian Markinson, Vorin, can also be seen as Lieutenant Durst, in 2 episodes of Star Trek Voyager, Dr. Elias Ginger in one episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Apparently, we don't make such a bad team after all. Nikolai Rosenko to Worf. And you can see a group shot of the background actors cast in the Boralans in Homeward. Most of the performances that appeared in Star Trek The Next Generation before and we go on to feature in the background of other Star Trek series. So this episode, we move on to Sub Rosa. Star Trek The Next Generation goes gothic for one of its strangest and most polarizing episodes. This is episode 7.14 and premiered January 31st of 1994. Beverly Crusher falls under the influence of a mysterious being in a romantic Scottish Highland setting. Soon after enchanting Beverly and Sub Rosa, Duncan Ronan went on to play Kira Neve's love interest, Shakara Eden, in 3 episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I'll never set foot in that house again, and I recommend that you, Diana, either. Ned Quint. Michael Keenan later played a holodeck character, Grother, in Star Trek Voyager, and then genetically enhanced Patrick in 2 episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So this episode is titled Lower Decks. Like an episode like no other, at least for inspiring an entire animated series. So this is an interesting episode. Episode 7.15 premiered February 7th of 1994. 4 junior officers all have a part to play in a secret mission to the edge of Cardassian space. And it's interesting to get the point of view from lower ranking officers and crewmen. Lower Decks is the 7th and final Star Trek The Next Generation episode directed by Gabriel Beaumont. You were her friends. I was only her commanding officer, Worf. The Lower Decks guest cast including Jerry Taylor's son, Alexander Enberg, as the Vulcan Ensign Torek. And is that it? Oh, that's it. You can see FanHome, and we got the Enterprise on the back. So this is the second to last. The next shipment, with 31, is actually going to be the last shipment that we're going to get. So this is getting really, really exciting. The thought of finishing her off, because this is north of 3 years. And keep in mind that we had to go through with Eagle Moss going bankrupt. So we had that delay, but it's going to be amazing when this is finished. All right, let's take a look at the parts packs now. We're going to start with parts pack 115. And one of the things right off the bat is you can see the battery cover, the battery pack cover that's going to go on the bottom of the primary hull. So let's take a look at that. And hopefully you guys can see the Aztecing. And this has the magnets that's going to kind of click it into place. Next we have the power pack with the light switch, and you can see where it's going to plug into the circuit board for the starboard side nacelle that we're working on. Speaking of the battery pack, you can see is this cover. You can see one of the covers that's going to hold the spring in place. And we have the beacon. You can see the beacon that's going to come through. green for starboard for the flashing light. We have the battery cover that's going to screw into place to hold the battery in place, and you can see the bolt with the screw that's going to hold the plate onto the battery pack. And lastly, we've got AP screws. And that is everything that was in issue number 115. Okay, moving on to issue number 116. Looks like we have the metal piece for the nacelle. So we got some packets of screws, and we've got that push pin. Get this out. There. So we got the little push pin, and what this is going to do is this is going to go into the little spring. So I might as well just put it in now so it doesn't get lost. You can see we have the cover that's going to hold it into place inside the nacelle. And let's see, we've got some HM screws, AM screws, and GM screws. All right, let's take a look now at the bottom of the nacelle. Absolutely beautiful. And with everything to this point, if it's in a plastic tray, chances are it's metal. And look at that. Absolutely beautiful. Hopefully you can see the Aztecing in the light. Beautiful. And you can see where the switch is going to go, the battery compartment, and the beacon. So this is going to be really fun. And that was everything in issue number 116. Next up, we have build up stage number 117. It looks like we have more of the battery pack stuff. Let's get all this stuff out. So you can see the battery pack, just like the one that's in the primary hull. You can see where it's going to hook into the circuit board, and this is going to have 3 AAA batteries, I believe. You can see the, I just seen it, here it is. We got the bolt that's going to hold the plate with the screw, but we also have a spring. They actually put the spring in a bag in this one. The previous one they didn't. We've got AM screws, DP screws, and we have AP screws. And you can see the 2 covers, one for the battery pack and one for the spring and the pin to keep it in position. And lastly, you can see they have the lock pin. So that was everything in issue number 117. And lastly, we have stage number 118. Make sure that that doesn't bounce away. All right, first thing I notice is we got the bottom of the nacelle for the port's starboard side, excuse me. And this is plastic. You can see where the push pins are going to go into place to hold it in position. Then we have the cover for the battery pack. It's going to go in, it's going to screw into place. and you can see a couple of the pieces that we're going to use to secure the docking ports on top of the battle section to connect the primary hull. And let's see, these look like more of those pieces. And lastly, all by itself, we have a screw. I think that's going to be for the battery pack. And that was everything in stage number 118. So my friends, that was everything in shipment number 30. We've got stages number 115, 16, 17, and 118 as we're getting close to the finish line on this build of the amazing NCC 1701D from Star Trek The Next Generation. So the whole reason I do this video, my friends, I've done this since shipment 1. I show you absolutely everything in the unboxing. We go through the instructions, we go through the magazines, and this video is just the unboxing, and in the next video we're going to just do the build. I'm not going to go into what comes with anything or into the magazine or anything. We're just going to do the build. So that's what this video is for, is to show you everything included. And until the build, my friends, which will be very soon, thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.